It is finally time for the ultimate bossing tier list of 2024. I have covered all the important and unimportant boss fights in Curse of Aros, and this is the epitome of all of my research and findings. If you haven't yet done so, I highly recommend you to first check my bossing videos in my channel before watching this tier list, as every single boss I have covered had their own benefits and unique setbacks which I thoroughly explored in those videos. For this particular video, I will rate every single boss available in the game right now based on a few key factors to determine whether the boss is worth farming or not. These factors include: is the boss profitable? Does the boss drop meaningful loot? Is the boss fun to kill on repeat? And finally, is the boss excessively annoying to farm? Now, these are all important reasons for farming bosses, and it will be extremely biased of me to rate a boss based on 4 very distinct attributes. So make sure you understand that this entire video will be very one-dimensional. As in, these are all just my personal opinions. The video is technically 4-dimensional. Very wow. There will be 4 categorical ratings, starting with C tier, meaning these are just completely garbage bosses, then B tier, meaning these are not horrible options, then A tier, meaning these are all pretty good choices for farming, and finally S tier, meaning these are absolutely nuts and you must consider farming these, and you will. Aside from these categories, depending on where the bosses sit in the rows dictate their intra-categorical ratings. That is, the boss's position towards the left is generally better for farming than anything positioned to its right. So without further ado, let's start the video by first hitting the subscribe button. I caught you off guard. Why don't you do it right now? Please. So worst on the tier list, we have the Reanimated Soul. This piece of shit boss has 600,000 HP, takes forever to kill, all while it drops some of the most useless loot. In fact, these EXP potions even have an ownership limit of 5 potions of any tier, so you cannot find a bunch of these potions to use in one single sitting. Once you hit this limit, you can no longer get drops from the boss. Not that these potions were even good to begin with. The boss also has the most annoying spawn time, as it is based entirely on mummy deaths, so you cannot even estimate when the boss will appear. To add, the boss deals so much damage to you if you stand still, so you have to keep moving all the time for a freaking long time. Truly a waste of time, C tier. And next we have the weakest boss of them all, the Warbad. This boss is known for dropping the Bat Ring and the Bat Amulet for a collective 5 accuracy, which is almost meaningless for warriors when both the Cactus Ring and Amulet of Focus exists and are also equipable at level 1. Nothing much else about this particular fight aside from it being completely irrelevant. Still in a better spot than a Reanimated Soul though. And then next we have the Rock Demon. This is by far one of the most annoying yet very useless boss to farm in the game. The entire Warrior Dead Rock set is painfully subpar to the Glacial set given their level requirements are so narrow. Like seriously, just get the Glacial set instead. They're so much easier to resell as well. I know you're gonna ask about the Dayrock Shield and Amulet of Focus, so let's quickly get this out of the way. Yes, the Dayrock Shield is actually really good and an excellent one to use until you eventually equip the Dormant Shield, but I simply recommend just buying it off players instead of farming the boss for it. Also, Amulets of Focus are in such heavy supply in the market right now, it literally only costs about 2 million gold, and you will definitely find a seller within 5 minutes, trust me. Also, let's not even begin talking about the swarm of peasants hodling the boss's spawn. Moving on. Now, we are killing a lot of bosses in this C tier, but we have one more to go, and that is Spinus. This boss drops only one thing of value, and that is a Cactus Ring that we talked about earlier on. While this ring is actually really good to use, most players don't focus much on their warrior builds after achieving level 95 to 100 in melee and will gladly sell off their retired rings. They are reasonably priced at around 7 million, so I recommend just buying it instead of having to kill about 250 Spinuses for it. Spinus drops nothing else noteworthy aside from a Cactus pet, but the boss deals so much damage to you, making this an absolute potion sink, meaning it is extra annoying to farm. Don't bother with it. Now, moving into B tier, these are bosses that are not the worst for farming, but I still wouldn't recommend them either. We start off with the Ancient Warbad. Now, unlike its prepubescent half-brother, this bat actually drops many things of value. In fact, this boss drops everything in the Glacial set save for the Glacial Blade, and as we already know, the Glacial set is one I highly recommend to beginner warriors. The Ancient Warbad is also extremely easy to AFK farm, as he has no mechanics whatsoever that could make the run more complicated than farming actual level 1 bats. However, I still won't recommend farming this boss as it drops nothing regularly that could be worth of anything of value. This means you could go for an entire hour with no loot at all and the effort will be completely wasted, but on the other hand, you could get extremely lucky and get a piece or 2 of the glacial equipment, but then again, these pieces are priced so cheaply, it's simply better to just buy the gear pieces from other players. I don't recommend farming the Ancient Warbad. Now, just like the Rock Demon, the Shadow Demon is equally annoying to fight. However, farming the Shadow Demon is much more meaningful as it drops balance fragments very regularly. These fragments are used to smith the level 100 elemental shield, so they are somewhat useful and needed and can be traded. You could net a profit of up to 18 million gold per hour farming a Shadow Demon, but the reason he sits in B tier is simply because the elemental shield is not commonly sought after, so the balance fragments are not so easy to sell. This means the boss run could net you decent gold per hour or completely no gold per hour. Now, this might come as a surprise, but the final boss for this entire tier is Umbra. Umbra is actually pretty ass to farm. You see, the boss has an unnecessary lengthy and boring attack rotation, and a single slip up would require you to chuck 1,000 potions just because. To add, the boss also does not drop very important loot. Hear me out. While this is the best way to obtain Dragon Scales, Dragon Claws, Dragon Horns, Dragon Eyes to smith the level 90 Warrior Umbra set, the aforementioned set is actually very skippable. I covered this in my Warrior guide and I highly advise you to check that out to understand a little bit more, but here's a summary of it. So the level 85 Golemite set not only has very similar stats to the Umbra set, but the next equipment leap comes at just level 95. And that is the Ancient set. Golemite and Umbra sets are completely untradeable as well, and this puts the Umbra set in a very awkward situation. I highly recommend skipping it if you're very savvy with your goal. Umbra. Now we enter A tier territory and we have just about less than half the bosses left to talk about. The weakest in this tier, however, that would be the Ice Demon. Now this boss drops Ice Relics very regularly, which means farming this boss gives you regular income regardless of whether you get extra lucky or not. Ice Relics are extremely sought after as they are needed the most in general tailoring. In fact, based on my Ice Demon video, we obtained 14 million gold per hour from Ice Relics drops alone. But what do I mean by getting extra lucky? This isn't referencing that blatant lie you told your friends about that one time you went to school and this extra hot girl checked you out and you guys traded numbers and had a very spicy summer. No, we both know you have a face only a mother can love, so getting lucky means getting either the Spectral Helm which sells for 8 million gold or the Phantom Helm which fetches a very high price of 20 million gold. All in all, a very good spot to farm. Next we have the Mummy. This boss drops a lot of loot which have immediate value such as gold keys, gold bars, ancient tablets and cursed relics. However, most of the loot the Mummy drops do not stack up and instead overflows your inventory really quickly. This means you have to walk to and fro from the boss back to the desert bank every few minutes just to stash your loot. To add, the keys you find are also used to open treasure chests in the tomb for a chance for a decent loot like the Mummy bandages, Mummy soul and soul jars. This adds another layer of RNG on top of the overall value of farming mummies, which makes the entire farming situation very iffy and very difficult to estimate. But above all else, initiating a single mummy fight requires an Ankh key that is valued at 500,000 gold in the free market, so that means you're immediately setting yourself back by 500,000 gold just by attempting this boss. Better not die, otherwise you just lost a lot of value. Yikes. Regardless, the mummy's drops are really good and the fight is fast paced and exciting and definitely a fun one if you can do it well or if you can raid it quickly with some friends. Now the final spot in the A tier must go to the Golem. This boss, while pretty easy but risky, does come with a lot of value. Please note that farming this boss also includes farming the Golemite fiends between bosses respawns, which further adds to the profitability of your hour. You will chance upon very important Golemite materials and quickly build a stash of lollipops this way. In fact, the Golem is currently the best way to farm lollipops. An average hour of farming Golems and Golemite fiends would net you at least 20 million gold worth of drops, and it should also be noted that Golemite materials are crucial and heavily sought after. And this concludes the A tier, so we are just left with 2 more bosses. Now, no surprise the Nature Elder would fit the lesser of the 2 in the S tier. This shouldn't be a surprise as the other remaining boss not yet placed on the list is Nydarax. However, the Nature Elder drops a ton of good shit and can easily net you 25 million gold worth of drops per hour. These drops are all essential to tailoring like books, magic essences and nature relics, which the latter is also invaluable for mining, fishing and woodcutting. Now, believe me when I say that Nature Elders drops sell fast, because they do. Above all else, the Nature Elder is incredibly easy to farm with an extremely powerful turmoil set, and the boss also respawns very quickly, making a turnover of profit very high. This is by far the best boss to have on repeat while you relax, watch the free to play videos, and have a good time. Now, for the final and best boss to farm, we have Nydarax. Even though her drops are dipping in prices due to shrinking demand, the base value of her general loot still ranges between an excellent 23 to 25 million gold per hour. That means any extra loot you find, like the Nydarax leg and Nydarax fangs, will supercharge your gains by up to another 50 million gold per hour. This makes farming Nydarax far superior to the rest of the bosses. The only reason Nydarax sits in the same tier with the dirty Nature Elder is simply because, contrary to the Nature Elder, Nydarax is a pretty challenging boss to fight and you need to be very focused and on your toes while farming her. You should never risk death as this throws you out of a dungeon and the walk back to her smelly den is very long and tedious. But you felt like a daredevil, then you could even tailor the difficulty of this boss fight according to a number of turmoils of Nydarax you bring to guarantee more loot. There is a slew of other crazy things you could do to exponentiate your gains while farming Nydarax, and you can find all the relevant videos in my channel. But that about summarizes all the bosses we currently have in Curse of Aros, and this was one hell of a tier list to create as he had so many prerequisites and visits to most of these bosses we talked about in this video. Feel free to disagree with anything I said, but do leave a comment so that we can get a perspective as to why you feel differently and whether there is room for improvement in this very biased tier list video. I'm always keen to learn more and grow from my experiences, so do let me know what you liked and disliked about these bosses as well. With that said, hope you guys enjoyed today's content. If you did, give it a thumbs up, it really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Curse of Aros content. Now with that said, this has been Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.